Hi, and welcome to Focal Point. Back to Focal Point, AFR Talk on this Wednesday edition of Focal Point. Glad to have you in the conversation with us. We're going to go right to the phones, 888-589-8840. Dr. Keith Abloh, by the way, on Fox News today has a great piece. The title of the piece is "No One is Born a Pedophile." And I say you could just rewrite this piece. You could substitute the word homosexual or gay in there everywhere the word pedophile occurs, and you could publish it as the same piece. It's exactly the same point. No one is born a homosexual. Now, what Abloh says, hey, some people may have some kind of childhood trauma that for some reason predisposes them as they grow to adulthood to be sexually attracted to children. Usually, he says, it's because of some kind of traumatic sexual experience as a child. And there's a lot of evidence that indicates that's one of the things that can predispose someone to be drawn toward people of the same sex. If they experience sexual molestation as a child by somebody from the same sex, it can have a powerful imprinting effect on their own understanding of their sexuality. But Keith Abloh says no one is born a pedophile. I agree with him. And no one is born a homosexual. And Abloh says, look, if you have pedophiliac kind of impulses, you got to master that. You got to control that. You have no excuse. There's never an excuse for yielding to those dark impulses. You got to overcome that. It will destroy you. It will destroy the people around you. And we would say the same thing toward those that are involved in homosexual behavior. That's an impulse that needs to be conquered. It needs to be mastered, because if it's not, it will destroy you. It will destroy people around you. And we want something better for you than for you to be trapped in the darkness of that self-destructive kind of behavior. Well, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's go to John in Center, Texas. John, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Just fine. Go right ahead.
Okay. I got a question for you, and you're the man to ask us, I guess. The first of the year, Hillary Clinton was running around with a lady, with a suit from head to toe. I thought she was the ambassador of Egypt. Now, all of a sudden, Susan Rice pops up, and that lady disappeared. Are they the same person or what?
Well, I don't know if I've got an answer for your question on that,
I was wondering. Okay,
John. I know that Hillary Clinton has put on a scarf when she's gone to some of these Muslim countries.
Miss Rice, Bush's and Secretary of State wouldn't do that.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer to that question. But that's a good question, John. And why don't we grab a couple of sound bites? Because Susan Rice, let's go to clip 9, Rob, if we can, and we'll squeeze these in here since John's drawn our attention to this. Susan Rice is going to be nominated apparently by Barack Obama as the next ambassador or the Secretary of State to replace Hillary Clinton. And remember, she was the one that was out there peddling this false narrative that the Benghazi attack was all about this video when they knew within 24 hours it wasn't. And so John McCain and Kelly Ayotte and Lindsey Graham have also, look, we got real problems with this. We got problems with her being the Secretary of State because she went out and lied to the American people. So yesterday, the three of them met with Susan Rice to try to see if their concerns about her could be allayed. And here's what Lindsey Graham says, clip 9, coming out of his conversation with Susan Rice.
Graham, let's listen to the senator.
I'm more disturbed now than I was before that the 16 September explanation about how 4 Americans died in Benghazi, Libya by Ambassador Rice, I think does not do justice to the reality at the time, and in hindsight clearly was completely wrong. But here's the key. In real time, it was a statement disconnected from reality. If anybody had been looking at the threats coming out of Benghazi, Libya, it was jump out at you. This was a Al-Qaeda storm in the making. If you can do nothing but give bad information, isn't it better to give no information at all? So my belief is not only is the information bad, and I'm more convinced than ever that it was bad, it was unjustified to give the scenario as presented by Ambassador Rice and President Obama 3 weeks before an election.
Yeah, and remember, President Obama said, look, she was speaking for me. If you want to go after somebody, go after me. So he is as implicated in this deception, in this falsehood, in this blatant disconnect from reality. He's as connected to this. He's as implicated in this as Susan Rice. Now, James Rosen, clip 10 and 11. James Rosen from Fox News pressing Jay Carney yesterday, who is the president's spokesman, on this whole issue about the account that Susan Rice gave. And Jay Carney admits in his reaction, yeah, well, we lied to the American people. Let's listen.
I wanted to follow up on both of the areas we've been talking about. First, since we're on it, Ambassador Rice, in the statement that she released today and to which you have referred us, she says something which marks the first time that she has said this, which is, and I quote, "In the course of the meeting, we explained that the talking points provided by the intelligence community and the initial assessment upon which they were based were incorrect in a key respect. There was no protest or demonstration in Benghazi." And yet, references to this protest that never occurred and these demonstrations that never occurred in Benghazi were a staple of President Obama's pronouncements about Benghazi for all the way on through September 25 at the United Nations. Why?
James, I appreciate the question, and there have been some very interesting answers to these questions of late. But I would make the point that, as Ambassador Rice makes clear in this statement, that those initial assessments were wrong in one key respect. There was no protest outside the Benghazi facility.
Okay, so now we have President Obama's spokesman admitting there was no protest outside the Benghazi facility. Susan Rice, who is the ambassador to the UN and the spokesman on this whole deal, she's admitted that there was no protest or demonstration in Benghazi. It's taken them till now. I mean, the thing happened on September 11. Here we are almost to December, and just now the administration's finally admitting it. So here is the follow-up question for Mr. Rosen.
So that's why people are asking about it. I'm sure some have political motives, but you don't have to impugn the motives of the questioner when we ask those questions. My other point I wanted to raise with you on Ambassador Rice, and then I want to move to Fiscal Cliff, is the presence of the acting CIA director in this meeting. Whose idea was that?
I'm not sure whose idea it was. The fundamental issue here, unless this is all about politics, is what information was Ambassador Rice provided and by whom, and what was it based on when she went out on television to take questions about what happened in Benghazi and what was happening around the region and the world. Because the talking points that she relied on and others relied on were provided by the intelligence community, I think it's entirely appropriate that the acting director of the CIA participate in these meetings. It has been repeatedly said by some of the critics on this issue on the Hill that the White House provided talking points. That has been categorically refuted, not just by us, but by the intelligence community, and yet it still periodically is said on the air. And it's just wrong.
And the reality is the White House did alter the talking points that were given to Susan Rice, because General Petraeus, he talked about the original talking points memo that came from CIA. It didn't say what Susan Rice said on Sunday. Somebody got to it. Somebody from the White House got to it, changed the talking points, and sent her out to lie to the American people. And what Jay Carney's doing on behalf of the president, trying to blame the intelligence community for all this is all Petraeus' fault, not our fault. Our hands are clean. We're pure as the driven snow. Just like everything about the economy was Bush's fault. So any problems you have is the problems with the intelligence community. And, of course, Petraeus is gone. He's not around to defend himself, so a convenient scapegoat. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Denise in Columbus, Mississippi. Denise, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
I just had a comment about
Yes, ma'am.
the T-shirt shop situation.
Yes.
And I'm a small business owner, and it's kind of offensive to think that we have to serve people that we don't really believe in their values. And we've seen it with wedding cakes and photographers. And I was thinking, what would have been the reaction if the T-shirt shop owner had said, we'll be glad to print these T-shirts, but we'd like you to know that all the profits will be going to American Family Radio or American Family Association or some other association with like values. And I'll hang up and let you comment. Thank
All
you.
right, Denise. So that's an interesting suggestion. And you wonder if they would complain about that. No, you can't send any of the money you make on our project. We know that you find our project offensive, but you have to do it anyway. And not only that, you can't take any of the proceeds from this project and give it to an organization of your choosing. You have to give it to organizations of our choosing. That'd be an interesting wrinkle on the whole deal. Great suggestion, Denise. Let's go to Stacy, Richmond, Virginia. Stacy, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Yeah, It just behooves me how and why, this current administration gets away with it, gets away with. And for a lot of what I see particularly, something that my wife doesn't see, a lot of her family and my own family don't see, I guess, because they only listen to mainstream radio. They don't hear the truth like what's coming from guys like you. And my thing is, wow, don't they have some sort of inkling that, hey, his Obama's ideology eventually is going to throw everybody under the bus, especially the gay rights community and women. If he gets away with this ideology he has, which I consider Islam, that's going to throw the gay rights community and women under the bus. And I'm like, wow, why is it that nobody can see this?
Yeah.
As well as Christians and Jews.
Well, that's a great point, Stacy. And, this is just kind of mind-boggling. And thanks for the call. I think what Stacy's pointing out is, President Obama is obviously much more sympathetic to Islam than to Christianity. Has Ramadan dinners, goes out of his way to praise Islam, talks about the wonders of the Islamic faith, all the contributions Islam's made to America. Never talks about the contributions that Christianity has made to America. But Islam is brutal to women. 91% of all the honor killings around the world are carried out by Muslims against women who can dishonor the family name by getting raped. They will put a woman to death in a Muslim country for getting raped because the fact that she's a victim of this sexual assault has brought dishonor and shame to the family, so they'll cut her throat, cut her head off. And same with homosexuals. I mean, you got homosexuals that are under a death sentence right now in Iran. So it's just bizarre that you'd have the secular left in America teaming up with the worst forces of secular or of devout Islam. Back after the news. Stay with us. Focal Point, AFR Talk.
American Family.